My name is Isabella Carter, and I am 32 years old. To the outside world, my life now looks polished: silk blouses, designer heels, marble floors, glass chandeliers. But behind the gates of my mansion lies a history no one sees, a story stitched together with rejection, loneliness, and a hunger to prove myself. When I was younger, family was everything to me. I grew up in a small town where reunions were like sacred rituals. Twice a year, everyone would gather: cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. There were barbecues, lawn games, and endless laughter. And in those moments, I thought I belonged. But that belonging had an expiration date. The year I turned 17, everything shifted. My father passed away suddenly, a heart attack in the middle of an ordinary Thursday morning. My mother, always brittle and harsh, retreated into herself. She leaned on her sisters, my aunts, who had always looked down on me. They whispered that I was too quiet, too bookish, too plain to matter. I overheard them once in the kitchen while I washed dishes. "She'll never go far," Aunt Margaret had said, her voice sharp. "Exactly," Aunt Ruth replied. "She's not like her cousins. She doesn't have the spark. No one will remember her." Their words carved into me deeper than they'll ever know. That summer, I noticed the invitations stopped coming. The reunion barbecue I had looked forward to every July? Somehow, I missed the call. Thanksgiving gatherings where my cousins filled photo albums with smiling faces? I was forgotten. Christmas dinners where they exchanged gifts in front of glowing trees? No message ever reached me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I called. I wrote. I begged. My mother dismissed me coldly. "Stop making everything about you, Isabella." So I stopped calling. I stopped begging. And that's when the silence grew permanent. For 15 years, I was the ghost of my family. They carried on without me, snapping photos, posting them online for the world to see. I watched from a distance as my cousins got married, had children, celebrated anniversaries, and shared memories I was never part of. Each photo was another reminder. I didn't belong. The pain turned into anger, and the anger hardened into ambition. I swore I would never again stand outside the window while my family feasted inside. I would build a life so big, so undeniable, that they couldn't ignore me even if they tried. And so I worked. While they laughed together at reunions, I pulled double shifts at the diner to save money for community college. While they toasted champagne at weddings, I studied until dawn, pushing myself through every exam. When they shared photos of family vacations in Italy and Spain, I was cleaning offices at night to pay for textbooks. I earned my business degree one stubborn step at a time. Then I clawed my way into a corporate job where no one cared about my last name, only my results. And when I finally saved enough, I took a leap of faith. I launched my own company. The early days were brutal. I lived off ramen noodles and cheap coffee, every cent funneled back into the business. I faced rejection, bankruptcy scares, sleepless nights. But I didn't stop. Every no fueled me. Every slammed door made me sharper. And then, slowly, the tide shifted. Clients poured in. My company grew. One office turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. And by the time I turned 30, I was signing contracts worth more than my entire hometown combined. The mansion came later, a sprawling estate on the edge of the city with iron gates, manicured gardens, and a driveway so long you couldn't see the road from the front door. To me, it wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that I had risen, that I had built something without their love, without their acceptance. But even with all the marble floors and chandeliers, the old wounds still whispered. Because success doesn't erase betrayal. It just puts it in sharper contrast. And then one summer afternoon it happened. I was in the garden, pruning roses with the help of my housekeeper, when the security guard called. "Miss Carter," he said hesitantly, "you have visitors. They say they're family." For a moment, my heart stopped. Family. That word was a knife. "Who?" I asked, my voice flat. "There's a group of them. A couple in their 60s, 2 women in their 40s, a few younger ones. They're all standing at the gate asking for you by name." I froze, clippers trembling in my hand. I didn't need names. I knew. 15 years of silence, and now here they were, at my gates. I walked slowly to the front terrace, my heels clicking against the marble, and when I saw them through the iron bars, my chest tightened. There was Aunt Margaret, her hair grayer but her eyes just as sharp. Aunt Ruth, clutching her designer handbag like a weapon. My cousins, smiling nervously, children fidgeting at their sides. They looked smaller somehow, standing before the gates of everything they once said I would never achieve. Margaret called out first. Isabella. Oh, it's been so long. Her voice dripped with false sweetness, the kind of tone you use when you want something. Ruth chimed in. We were just in town and thought we'd stop by. My goodness, what a beautiful home you have. I stood there, unmoving, my arms folded across my chest. 15 years. 15 years of silence, exclusion, rejection. And now, suddenly, they had found their way back to me. Inside, part of me wanted to scream, to hurl every ounce of pain back at them, to demand answers for every birthday, every holiday, every reunion they had denied me. But another part of me, colder, sharper, knew better. Because this wasn't just a visit. It was a test. And I was no longer the girl they left behind. I let the silence stretch, my eyes locked on theirs through the iron bars. And finally I smiled, a slow, measured smile that made Margaret shift uncomfortably. Well, I said softly, my voice carrying across the courtyard, look who remembered I exist. I didn't open the gate right away. I let them stand there, sweating under the summer sun, shifting from foot to foot as if the iron bars separating us were more than just metal, they were justice made visible. For 15 years, those bars had existed in my heart. Now, finally, they could see them too. Margaret cleared her throat, forcing another smile. Isabella, dear, it's been far too long. We've all missed you at the reunions. The audacity of her words almost made me laugh. Missed me? The last time I checked, no one had picked up the phone, written a letter, or knocked on my door. Missed me? I repeated, my voice echoing across the courtyard. You had 15 years to miss me. 15 years of barbecues, weddings, birthdays, and Christmas dinners. And not once did you think to invite me. Her smile faltered, but Ruth jumped in quickly, her tone dripping with practiced charm. We were young then. People make mistakes. But look at you now. You've done so well for yourself. We're proud of you. Proud. That word stung. They had called me a failure, dismissed me as invisible, shut me out like I didn't exist. And now, because I had gates and marble floors, they were proud. You're proud of me? I said softly, my eyes narrowing. Tell me, which part makes you proud? The part where I worked double shifts at a diner to put myself through school? The part where I studied until my eyes burned while you all toasted champagne without me? Or maybe the part where I cried myself to sleep on Christmas Eve because my family had decided I didn't belong anymore? The silence on the other side of the gate was deafening. My cousins avoided my gaze, shuffling nervously. Their children looked confused, tugging at their mother's sleeves. Finally, one of my cousins, Claire, spoke up. Isabella, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things just drifted. Families get busy. Drifted. I repeated sharply. You don't drift for 15 years, Claire. You erase. And you erased me. Her face flushed, and she looked away. Margaret, still clinging to her false bravado, straightened her shoulders. Well, the important thing is we're here now. We thought it was time to reconnect, to bring the family together again. After all, blood is thicker than water. Something inside me snapped. Blood is thicker than water? I hissed. Where was that blood when I needed help paying tuition? Where was it when I was alone on my birthdays? Where was it when I begged for a seat at your table? No, Margaret. Blood is nothing without loyalty. And loyalty is something none of you showed me. They all went quiet again. I could see sweat dripping down Margaret's temple, Ruth fanning herself with her hand, Claire biting her lip. I turned slightly, gesturing to the mansion behind me. You see this house? Every brick, every inch of it, I built without you. You shut me out, and I rose anyway. And now you come crawling back, acting like nothing happened. Why? Ruth stepped forward, her voice suddenly softer. Because we realize now how wrong we were. And well, the truth is times have been hard. Some of us are struggling. We thought maybe you could help. There it was. The truth laid bare like a rotten core. Help. That was what they wanted. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Not family. Money. The fury in my chest boiled over, but I forced my face into calmness, the kind of calm that hides fire underneath. So that's it, I said slowly. You shut me out for 15 years, and now that I have something you want, you remember my name. Ruth's eyes flickered with guilt, but Margaret spoke quickly, desperate. It's not like that, Isabella. We love you. We always have. We just made mistakes. I laughed then, a sharp, bitter laugh that made them flinch. Love? You don't get to use that word. Love shows up. Love calls. Love remembers. You don't love me. You love what I can do for you. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the cracks in their perfect facade. Their children, sensing the tension, started whining to go home. I let the silence hang, savoring the discomfort, before I finally said, You want to come in? You want to stand in my house and act like family? Fine. But first, I want to hear the truth. Say it. Say why you really excluded me. Say why you thought I wasn't good enough. Margaret's face twisted, her mask cracking. For a moment, she looked like the woman I remembered from my teenage years. Sharp-tongued, judgmental, cruel. You want the truth? She snapped. Fine. You were always different, Isabella. Quiet. Awkward. You didn't fit in with the rest of us. You were a burden after your father died, and your mother couldn't handle you. It was easier without you. That's the truth. Her words hit like a slap, but instead of breaking me, they fueled me. I stood taller, my voice steady as stone. Thank you, I said coldly. That's all I needed to hear. And then, slowly, deliberately, I pressed the button on the security panel. The gate creaked open, their faces lit with relief, smiles spreading as if they had won. But inside, I was already planning what came next. Because letting them in wasn't about forgiveness. It was about setting the stage. If they thought they could walk back into my life after 15 years and take from me, they were about to learn that I wasn't the same quiet, forgotten girl they had erased. I was Isabella Carter. And this was my house, my rules, my story. As they walked up the driveway, chattering nervously, I followed slowly behind, my heels clicking against the stone. The mansion loomed above us, the sunlight catching on its glass windows, reflecting their wide-eyed stares. They thought they were walking into comfort. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning. When the gates shut behind them, I swear I felt the air in my courtyard change. For years, they had kept me out of their gatherings, their homes, their lives. Now the roles had reversed. They were stepping into my world, under my roof, and every step they took echoed with irony. I watched them gawk at the mansion. The grand front doors towered above them, carved oak with iron handles that gleamed in the sunlight. My marble staircase stretched behind me, fountains bubbling in the garden. Their faces were a mix of awe and envy, and for a moment I almost savored it. Aunt Ruth whispered, thinking I couldn't hear, "It's bigger than Margaret's entire house." Margaret's lips tightened. I pushed open the heavy doors and gestured for them to step inside. The foyer, with its crystal chandelier and polished marble floors, drew gasps from my cousins. Their children ran ahead, their shoes clattering as they spun in circles beneath the chandelier. "Please," I said, my tone smooth but clipped, "make yourselves comfortable." They trailed into the living room, sinking into leather couches as if they'd earned them. My staff brought refreshments, sparkling water, a tray of pastries. I noticed how quickly Ruth reached for the most expensive-looking macaron, as if she had a right to it. For a moment, the room buzzed with shallow chatter. My cousins asked polite questions about the house, the decor, my travels. But beneath their words, I heard what they really meant. How did you do it? How did the girl we dismissed build this life without us? Finally, Margaret leaned forward, folding her manicured hands. "Isabella, We're so proud of you. Truly. We always knew you'd do something special. I set my glass down slowly, my eyes locking on hers.
No, you didn't.
You told everyone I wouldn't amount to anything. You laughed at me for working at the diner. You called me plain, awkward, unworthy. Don't rewrite history now just because these walls are taller than yours. Her cheeks flushed, but she forced a smile. We were just young and foolish back then. Families grow. People change. I tilted my head. And yet, for 15 years, you changed enough to include everyone else, but not me. The silence was sharp. My cousins shifted uncomfortably, sipping their drinks. Claire finally spoke, her voice timid. Isabella, we really didn't mean to hurt you. Life just moved on. Life didn't move on, I corrected. You moved on without me. There's a difference. I could see the words land like stones. For once, none of them had a quick reply. I leaned back, studying their faces. They had aged, of course. Lines etched by years of laughter I wasn't part of, holidays I wasn't invited to. But what struck me most was how ordinary they looked now. When I was younger, they had seemed larger than life, untouchable in their perfection. Now, sitting in my mansion, they seemed small. And that was when it hit me. I wasn't the outsider anymore. Dinner was served in the grand dining room, a long table set with silverware and crystal glasses. My staff placed dishes of roasted lamb, seasoned vegetables, fresh bread. The aroma filled the room, but I barely tasted a thing. I was too focused on the way my relatives looked around, eyes wide, as if cataloging everything they could one day ask me for. Halfway through the meal, Ruth cleared her throat. Isabella, you've done so well for yourself. We were wondering, are you still involved with your company? Or do you just oversee things now? The question was too pointed to be casual. I raised an eyebrow. Why? She gave a rehearsed laugh. Oh, just curious. You know, some of us have had difficult times. Jobs lost, mortgages behind. We thought maybe there could be opportunities. You know, family helping family. There it was again. The reason they were here. Not to reconnect. Not to apologize.
To take.
I set my fork down deliberately, the clink echoing in the quiet. Family helping family. I repeated slowly. Interesting. Where was that family when I was working 3 jobs to pay for textbooks? Where was it when I had to sell blood plasma to keep my electricity on? Where was it when I sat alone every Christmas, wondering why no one invited me? No one spoke. Even the children had gone quiet, sensing the storm in the air. I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. You didn't want me when I had nothing. So why should you want me now that I have everything? Margaret finally snapped, slamming her hand on the table. Enough. Yes, we left you out. Yes, maybe we were harsh. But we're here now. And whether you like it or not, we are your family. I stared at her, my pulse steady. You're right. You are my family. But being family is more than blood. It's loyalty. It's love. It's showing up when it matters. And for 15 years, you showed me none of that. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. I rose from my chair, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Dinner is over. Thank you for coming. They looked stunned. Margaret's mouth opened in protest, but I held up a hand. Don't. Not another word. You came here expecting a handout, thinking I'd forget 15 years of silence, because you want something. But let me be very clear. You are guests in my house, not my family. And you will never, ever erase what you did. I gestured to the staff, who moved swiftly to clear the table. As my relatives gathered their things, I walked them to the door. Their faces were a mix of anger, shame, and desperation. They had come expecting forgiveness, perhaps even favors. Instead, they left with the truth. At the threshold, I paused. You asked me to remember that blood is thicker than water.
And I will.
Because blood taught me that betrayal can come from the people who share your name. And that water, friends, mentors, even strangers, can sometimes be more family than blood ever was. Their eyes widened, but I didn't wait for a reply. I closed the door, the sound reverberating through the mansion like a final note. For a long time, I stood there, my hand resting on the cool wood, my heart pounding. I had let them in to face them. And now, finally, I had said what needed to be said. But something told me this wasn't the end. Because people like my aunts didn't give up easily. And I had a feeling they'd be back. Next time, though, I'd be ready. For 2 days after I closed the door on them, the mansion was still. My staff tiptoed, sensing the heaviness in the air. I walked through my own halls replaying every word, every look on their faces. Margaret's sharp anger, Ruth's slippery charm, Claire's guilty silence. It all clung to me like smoke after a fire. I told myself it was over. They'd eaten my food, they'd heard my truth, and I'd sent them away. But deep down, I knew better. My family was like weeds. You could cut them down, but if the roots were still there, they'd find a way back. On the third evening, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I knew the voice instantly. "Isabella, dear," Ruth said, her tone syrupy sweet. "We just wanted to thank you again for the wonderful dinner. The children can't stop talking about your beautiful house." I bit back a laugh. "Is that so?" "Yes," she continued, breezy, as if nothing had happened. "And we were thinking, it's such a big place for you to enjoy alone. It must get lonely." There it was. The hook dangled with feigned concern. "I'm not lonely, Ruth," I said flatly. "I built this life exactly the way I wanted it." "Well, of course, she replied quickly. "But, family is important. We thought perhaps we could come by again this weekend. Spend some real time together, reconnect. I let the silence stretch until I could almost hear her squirming on the other end. Finally, I said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. But I already knew my answer. When they returned that weekend, I let them in again. This time, it wasn't for closure.
It was to watch them.
To study how far they'd go to worm their way back into a life they had once cast aside. From the moment they stepped inside, their tactics were clear. Margaret, who had snapped at me days before, suddenly played the role of doting elder. "My, Isabella, this painting is exquisite. You've developed such impeccable taste." Ruth, as expected, leaned on flattery wrapped in guilt. "I can't stop thinking about how unfair life was to you, dear. If only we could go back, do things differently. But at least now we have the chance to make it right." And my cousins? They tried to paint themselves as allies. Claire stayed close, offering to help with household tasks, asking gentle questions about my business. Her brother, Daniel, brought a bottle of wine, saying, "We wanted to contribute, since you've been so generous." I watched it all quietly, sipping my drink, nodding, smiling politely. But inside, I was taking notes. Every word was a thread in their web. And I wasn't about to get caught. Over dinner, Ruth finally leaned in, voice lowered conspiratorially. "Isabella, you must understand, we only left you out back then because things were complicated. Your mother, rest her soul, she thought it was best. We didn't want to interfere." A cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. "Don't you dare blame this on my mother. She wasn't perfect, but she never told you to cut me off. That was your choice." Her cheeks flushed, but she pressed on. "We regret it deeply. And now, seeing you like this, so successful, so powerful, well, it only makes us want to be close again." I set my fork down slowly. Be close again? Or benefit again? The table went quiet. My words hung heavy, slicing through their charade. Margaret cleared her throat, trying to regain control. "Isabella, we're family. Surely you don't want to hold on to bitterness forever. Look at all you've achieved. Wouldn't it feel even better to share it with those who share your blood?" There it was. The heart of their game. They didn't want me, they wanted what I had built. I leaned back, folding my arms. Blood didn't sit with me when I studied all night. Blood didn't pay my bills. Blood didn't wipe my tears when I realized I'd been erased from my own family. So don't preach to me about blood now. Their faces stiffened, but none of them left. They were too desperate. After dinner, Claire followed me into the library. Her voice was softer, more hesitant. "Isabella, I know you don't trust us.
And you're right not to.
We failed you. But I want you to know, I did think about you, even if I didn't say anything.
I
I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid. I studied her, trying to read sincerity in her eyes. Maybe she was telling the truth. Or maybe this was just another angle. Fear is no excuse, I said quietly. Silence is as cruel as rejection. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, I almost felt something stir inside me. But I buried it quickly. I couldn't afford softness now. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the library, staring at the flames in the fireplace. Their visit confirmed what I already knew. They weren't here for love, or forgiveness, or family. They were here because my success had turned me into something they could no longer ignore. And that meant one thing. If they wanted something from me, they would have to pay the price. I began to think about revenge, not the petty kind, but the kind that teaches a lesson, the kind that makes sure no one ever forgets what they did to me. Because after 15 years of silence, I finally had the upper hand. And I wasn't about to waste it. I didn't sleep much after their second visit. I lay awake in my king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, their words circling like vultures. We just want to reconnect. Blood is thicker than water. Wouldn't it feel even better to share it with family? Every phrase was coated in sugar, but reeked of rot. They didn't come for me. They came for what I had built. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It fueled me. The next morning, I walked barefoot through the marble halls of my mansion, coffee steaming in my hand, and I made a decision. If my family wanted to be part of my world, I'd let them. But it would be on my terms. I would control the stage, the lights, and the script. And when the curtain fell, they would see clearly what 15 years of betrayal had cost them. So I called Margaret. "Isabella," she answered, her voice overly bright. "I was hoping to hear from you." "I've been thinking," I said coolly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to reconnect. Why don't you all come back this weekend? I'll host a proper family dinner." There was a pause, then a burst of delight. "Oh, Isabella, that sounds wonderful. We'll be there." I could almost hear her smirk through the phone, thinking she had finally worn me down. But I wasn't the same girl she had exiled years ago. This time, I had the power. The days leading up to that dinner were a blur of planning. Not because I wanted to impress them. I had nothing left to prove, but because I wanted every detail to remind them of the gulf between who they thought I was and who I had become. I had the dining room table extended to its full length, seating for 24, covered in a linen cloth imported from Italy. Silver cutlery gleamed under the chandelier. I ordered fresh flowers for every corner of the room, roses, lilies, orchids, arranged in vases taller than some of the children. The menu was prepared by my private chef, seared scallops, roasted duck, soufflés for dessert. But beneath the elegance, I prepared something else, the truth. I gathered photo albums, receipts, old pay stubs from the diner, even the certificate of my first degree. I laid them in a leather-bound portfolio and placed it at the head of the table where I would sit. Because if they wanted a reunion, they were going to hear the story they ignored. When Saturday came, the mansion was lit like a stage. My staff opened the doors, and in they walked. Margaret, Ruth, Claire, Daniel, and the children. This time, their eyes weren't just curious. They were hungry. Hungry for belonging, for access, for whatever piece of me they thought they could claim. "You look radiant, Isabella," Ruth said, air-kissing my cheek. "This place feels like home already." Not your home, I thought. Dinner began with false laughter and shallow compliments. Margaret praised the wine. Ruth admired the chandeliers. Claire told me I looked so sophisticated. It was all theater, every word rehearsed. Halfway through the duck course, I tapped my glass lightly. "I'd like to say a few words." The table quieted, forks set down, eyes turning to me. "I invited you here tonight," I began, my voice steady, "not because I believe in sudden forgiveness, and not because I've forgotten the past. I invited you here because I think it's time we all spoke the truth." Their smiles froze. I opened the leather portfolio and pulled out the first photo, me at 19, wearing a faded waitress uniform, exhaustion etched on my face. I held it up. This was me while you gathered for your reunions. I was working 2 shifts at the diner, saving every penny so I could afford community college. No one called. No one cared. I laid down the photo and pulled out another, my graduation certificate, bent from years of storage. This was me at 24, graduating with honors. I mailed invitations to every one of you. Not one of you showed up. The silence was thick. Claire's eyes dropped to her lap. Margaret shifted in her chair. I pulled out the next piece, an eviction notice I had once received during my hardest year. This was me, nearly homeless because I poured everything into building my company. Did anyone offer help? Did anyone even ask how I was?
No.
My voice grew sharper, steadier with every word. You erased me. 15 years of birthdays, holidays, milestones gone. And now, suddenly, you remember my name because I sit at the head of this table. Ruth opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't. Not yet. I leaned forward, my eyes sweeping the table. You called me quiet, plain, a burden. But the truth is, I was stronger than all of you. I didn't just survive. I built something greater than you could imagine. And now you want in. The children fidgeted nervously. Daniel cleared his throat. Isabella, that's not fair. We were young too. We didn't realize. I cut him off. Don't you dare tell me what's fair. I lived it. I counted every year, every empty seat at my table. And now I want you to hear this clearly. You are not here because you love me. You are here because you want something from me, and you will not get it. The room went still, my words hanging like thunder. Margaret finally snapped, her face red. We came here in good faith, Isabella. You can't hold the past against us forever. You're acting selfish. I laughed, cold and sharp. Selfish? I spent half my life giving everything to people who gave nothing back. If protecting myself now makes me selfish, then I'll wear that title proudly. I stood, closing the portfolio with a snap. Dinner is over. Leave. They stared at me, stunned. Ruth sputtered. You can't just leave, I repeated, my voice calm but unyielding. This house has no place for opportunists. Blood may tie us, but loyalty defines us. And none of you have shown me loyalty. My staff moved quietly to open the doors. Slowly, reluctantly, they rose from the table. The children were the only ones who looked back at me with wide, confused eyes. As they stepped into the night, I felt something loosen in my chest. For 15 years, I had carried their rejection like a weight. Tonight, I had set it down. But as the doors closed behind them, I knew it wasn't over. People like Margaret and Ruth didn't give up easily. They would scheme, manipulate, try again. And I was ready. Because now, I wasn't just the girl they had excluded. I was the woman who owned the house they stood outside of. And I had only just begun. The silence after they left that night was louder than any shouting match could have been. My staff moved quietly around the house, clearing dishes, wiping glasses, avoiding my eyes. When the front doors shut behind my family, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. That I had made myself clear, that they would accept the boundary and slink back into their lives. I should have known better. The calls started the next morning. Unknown numbers. Blocked IDs. Then finally, Ruth's voice on my voicemail. Isabella, we're so sorry if last night got heated. We didn't mean to upset you. Let's not dwell on the past. We're family, and family should stick together. Call me back, dear. Her words dripped with false concern, but I could hear the strain beneath. They weren't used to being denied. By midweek, Margaret had left her own message, sharper than Ruth's. Isabella, this isn't right. You can't hold a grudge forever. You're part of us whether you like it or not. It's time you stop being so dramatic. Dramatic. The word dug into me like a thorn. For 15 years, I had been erased, ignored, silenced. Now that I spoke up, I was dramatic. I didn't respond. But the silence only seemed to fuel them. The escalation came fast. A week later, a neighbor texted me. Hey, Isabella, saw some of your relatives in town.
They were talking about you at the cafe.
I froze, staring at the screen.
Talking about me.
By evening, I'd heard from 2 more acquaintances. The rumors had started. Isabella was arrogant, cold, ungrateful. She had abandoned her family, they said, forgotten her roots, turned her back on blood. It was almost laughable, except it wasn't. This was how my family had always operated. Whisper campaigns, subtle poisons slipped into ears until truth bent under their weight. They had done it before, painting me as the odd one, the quiet one, the misfit. And now they were doing it again. But this time, I wasn't 17. I wasn't powerless. That weekend, Margaret and Ruth showed up again, this time without calling first. My security guard called me, unease in his voice. They say it's urgent, Miss Carter. Should I turn them away? For a moment, I considered it, but something in me snapped instead. No, I said. Let them in. I waited in the grand hall as they walked up the marble steps, their heels clicking like weapons. Margaret's face was tight with anger, Ruth's with forced calm. Isabella, Margaret began, her tone clipped. We need to talk. I folded my arms. About what? The lies you've been spreading in town. Her eyes flashed. We haven't lied. We told people the truth, that you've cut yourself off from us, that you've let money turn you cold. I laughed bitterly. Cold? You froze me out for 15 years. Now I'm cold because I won't hand you the keys to my house. Ruth stepped forward, hands raised in fake peace. We're not here to fight. We're here to remind you that blood matters. People in this town respect family, Isabella. Do you really want to be known as the woman who turned her back on her own? The threat was subtle, but I heard it clearly. Reputation.
Community.
Belonging. I met Ruth's gaze, my voice calm but sharp. You think I care what this town whispers? Let them talk. I built my life without their approval. I can survive their disapproval. Margaret's lips curled. You're making a mistake. When you needed us, we might not have been there. But when you need us in the future, and you will, you'll regret this. Her words were meant to scare me. Instead, they solidified me. I needed you once, I said quietly. And you weren't there. I learned to live without you then. I can do it forever. I turned, gesturing to the door. Get out. They sputtered, fumed, muttered curses under their breath. But they left. As the doors closed behind them, my chest heaved. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, standing tall, unshaken, refusing to bend. But I knew it wasn't the end. They weren't done trying. And if they wanted a battle, I was ready to end it on my terms. That night, I sat in the library, a glass of wine in my hand, the firelight flickering against the leather-bound portfolio still resting on the desk. My life story, my evidence of survival, lay inside. And then I had an idea. If they wanted to rewrite the story, paint me as selfish, cold, dramatic, then I would write the truth myself. Not just for them, not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. I began drafting a speech, a testimony of sorts. I poured every memory onto the page. The nights I ate ramen to save for tuition, the graduation no one came to, the eviction notice I fought through alone, the company I built from scratch. Every wound, every triumph laid bare. Because revenge wasn't just about shutting them out. It was about making sure their version of the story never drowned out mine again. By the time dawn broke, my speech was ready. And I knew exactly when and where I would deliver it. The annual town charity gala was 2 weeks away. Everyone attended. Business leaders, politicians, church families. And of course my relatives. It was their social playground, the stage they had always used to polish their reputations. This year, I had been invited to speak as the event's largest donor. When I stepped onto that stage, the truth would no longer be whispers behind cafe doors. It would be the loudest voice in the room, and my family would have no choice but to hear it. The night of the gala, the mansion's halls were silent, but my heart thundered like a war drum. I stood before my mirror, smoothing the folds of a black silk gown that shimmered in the light. My hair was pinned up, a diamond pin glittering at my temple, a gift I had bought for myself, a symbol of self-made triumph. For years, I had dreamed of walking into a room not as the forgotten girl, not as the outsider, but as the woman who had built her empire brick by brick. Tonight was that night. The ballroom was alive when I arrived, strings playing softly, glasses clinking, chandeliers sparkling like constellations overhead. Laughter floated through the air, the kind of laughter that once excluded me. I stepped in and conversations faltered. Heads turned. And there they were. My family. Margaret in emerald silk, Ruth dripping in pearls, Claire and Daniel clustered nearby. Their eyes widened when they saw me. A flicker of shock, then calculation. They smiled, as if this was their chance to reclaim me under the watchful gaze of the town. But tonight, the stage was mine. The organizer approached, beaming. Ms. Carter, thank you for being here. We're honored to have you as our keynote speaker. I nodded, my lips curving in a steady smile. The honor is mine. When it was time, I walked to the podium. The lights bathed me in gold, and the room hushed. My family's faces glimmered in the crowd, expectant, smug, certain I would use this moment to flaunt wealth, but not to expose the past. They were wrong. I began softly. Good evening. Many of you know me as Isabella Carter, founder and CEO. You see the mansion, the company, the donations. But what you don't see is the road that got me here. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Margaret's jaw tighten. When I was 17, my father died. It shattered me. I thought family would catch me when I fell. Instead, they let me hit the ground. For 15 years, I was erased from gatherings, excluded from dinners, forgotten on holidays. I wasn't good enough. Not successful enough. Not enough. Gasps echoed in the room. My voice didn't waver. I worked 3 jobs to pay for school. I studied by candlelight when the power was cut. I celebrated milestones alone. And while my family laughed together, I built a life brick by brick with my own hands. Every tear, every rejection, every sleepless night fueled me. I didn't just survive, I rose. My gaze locked on Margaret and Ruth. Their faces were pale, frozen. And now, here I stand.
Not because they supported me.
Not because they believed in me, but because I refused to disappear. The ballroom was silent, the weight of my words pressing down like a storm. I lifted my chin. So, if anyone asks what family means to me, I'll tell them this. Family isn't just blood. Family is loyalty. Family shows up. And when blood turns its back on you, you learn that strength can come from within, and from the people who choose to stand by you. A swell of applause erupted, louder than I could have imagined. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering. But I didn't look at them. I looked only at the ones who had once shut me out. Margaret's face was crimson with humiliation. Ruth tried to force a smile, her hands trembling. Claire and Daniel looked down, shame burning their cheeks. For the first time, they weren't in control of the story. I was. After the gala, people crowded around me, congratulating me, praising my speech, calling me an inspiration. My family stayed back, stiff and silent, cornered by the truth laid bare. When I finally left, I passed them by. Margaret reached out, her voice sharp. Isabella, how could you humiliate us like that? I turned to her, calm, unflinching. I didn't humiliate you. I told the truth. If the truth shames you, that's your burden to carry. Ruth tried to plead. Please, can't we put the past behind us? People will talk. I met her gaze steadily. Let them talk. I survived worse than whispers. And then I walked away. That night, back in my mansion, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The air was cool, crisp, alive with possibility. For the first time, the weight of 15 years lifted off my shoulders. I had waited so long for them to see me, to acknowledge me, to give me a seat at the table. But I realized now I didn't need their table. I had built my own. They could keep their reunions, their whispers, their empty apologies. I had my truth, my strength, my life. And that was worth more than any seat at their gatherings. I raised my glass to the night sky, a toast to the girl they had forgotten and the woman she had become. Here's to never needing them again. And with that, I turned and walked back inside, the doors closing softly behind me. The chapter was over, and I was finally free.